And those of you who are joining us, please feel free to share the feed, share our story, invite your friends. Many of you are probably locked in. You can't get out because governors are saying, stay inside. The boogeyman is going to get you. Well, if that's the case, join us tonight. Promise to be a very entertaining show. Along with my host at Small Town Andrew, we have our guest at Ray Poetry, who'll be reading some of his excellent poetry. We have J News and Reviews. We have Heather Robinson. We have Phoebe. We have Josh Spodak. We have a lot of people lined up that are going to join us in bringing in the new year. Now, I don't know if we're going to last until midnight, but we'll see. We'll last as long as we can. But from my family to your family, cheers, and hope you have a prosperous new year. So, that being said, and without further ado, I will bring on my guest and my co-host. Ray, how's it going, man?
Good, everybody. Happy New Year. Glad to be here.
Andrew, how's it going?
It's going great, guys. Happy New Year to everyone.
Hi, Heather. How is it going?
Nice. It's going good. How are you?
Good, good. Joe, how's it going? Joel?
It's going great, man. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So we're going to start off our show a little different. Usually I would give my rants and my raves and I'm going on and on and on. But tonight we're going to have a reading by Ray Poetry.
Well, thank you. I thought it's kind of like a minister that starts the show, or when you go to some kind of outing. I'm going to read a poem called A Blessing in Disguise. The lockdowns lasted far too long. Is anyone surprised? But some events are heaven sent. They're blessings in disguise. They came out from the hollows and from every mountainside. The lake of the Ozark swimming hole was a blessing in disguise. The saddest death of Mr. Floyd led to riots far and wide. What happened to social distancing? It was a blessing in disguise. Governor Whitmer led the charge while protesters showed their pride. Huddled crowds with masky sounds, quite a blessing in disguise. Remember that a second wave could stricken those alive? But riots made the data cave, another blessing in disguise. Glass was shattered, buildings burned, scarves on faces meant to hide. Trump declared they're terrorists. That's a blessing in disguise. A country starved for many jobs. Watch our recovery fill with pride. No more news of COVID blues. It's our blessing in disguise. Shake the fear from all our peers. It's time we all decide. We Americans are meant to win. Thank God for blessings in disguise.
Wow. Beautiful poem. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So tonight, like I said, our show is going to be a little different. As we're going to go around, we're going to talk about the top items making the news. We're going to talk about a polling that we had put out earlier on Twitter. Also, each one of our guests will talk about what event took place this year that was very significant to them. And I'm sure that a lot of you have your thoughts, what you consider to be the items. As I said, I did a polling, and it was rather interesting some of the things that people were saying. Heather, well, let's start with you. How is it going?
It's going fine, Rob. Honored to be here. Wonderful to see you.
Well, I'm glad you could join us. I see that you're all festive to bring in 2021. I'm sure you have high hopes. Yeah. So looking back on last 2020, what, in your opinion, was one of the highlights?
Well, let's see. The highlights. Well, I think that right now, I think the launching of Operation Warp Speed, the vaccines on the way, are a miracle of modern medicine and the cooperation of a lot of great minds. And I think if we saw anything that really we could say, is a highlight in terms of the interpersonal over the past year, a lot of caretaking, solidarity, and well, not so much solidarity, honestly, as perseverance and grit, from the healthcare workers to the essential workers to families looking out for each other and friends calling to check in on each other and people doing the shopping so that elderly folk don't have to get into the crowd, and a lot of unsung heroes, I think, this year in those ways. So those, I think, would stand out for me, and also the chance to reflect, I guess. Ray spoke about blessings in disguise, and I think that one, for me anyway, has been this has really forced a reprioritization for me, and I guess I'm very lucky to have been able to hang out here, with my mother, and I got no complaints. She's healthy, I'm healthy, my immediate family is healthy, and so as far as I'm concerned, those of us, listen, I'm not talking about people with real financial hardship or who have lost family members or who have illness. That's, my heart goes out to them. Everybody else, though, can kind of quit complaining about the year as far as I'm concerned, because most of us are pretty fortunate.
Indeed.
Right. Wow, that's powerful. What stands out to you, in your opinion, as far as what took place this year? Significant event in your life?
I think the most significant event that stood out to me this year was seeing that a lot of minorities started to realize that President Trump was not as bad as everybody was coming off to say, because to see he almost tripled his voting participation on the conservative side than ever before blew everybody's mind, because I could say earlier in 2020, I was under the Democratic spell until I started researching and thinking for myself, and I started to see what everybody was talking about. Like, wait a minute, these don't allow this doesn't align with the values I have. I'm the type of person that I'm trying to, raise my kids the right way, give my kids guidance, and also have accountability. But I'm looking at a party that I was always programmed to support is teaching people to be a victim and not do accountability. I gotta rethink some things. And that really was one of the things that stood out for me. And the second thing that I think stood out for me the most is to see how we as Americans have basically been calling people out for trying to erase history, because it seems like that's another thing that is starting to become a problem in America. It's like we're trying to erase everything, trying to erase history because it doesn't fit our narrative, because it was ugly. Unfortunately, if that's the case, we wouldn't have the Holocaust being taught in schools if it was that bad. If it was that bad, we wouldn't have all these other things that went on with the Vikings, and all that stuff wouldn't be taught in schools, because those were supposed to be bad times. So why can't we not talk about the things that went on in American history? Instead of looking at it as a sin, look at it as a tool to say, all right, we was bad at this place, but now we're in a better place,
Right.
And I think that's what really opened my eyes, that I feel like that people are trying to paint a fake picture instead of painting a realistic one. And I think that's where we as patriots got to continue to press on, and not only teach our children that, but just teach the world that it's okay to look at the past.
Right.
You ain't got to go and live in it, but you can look at it and use it as a tool to guide you into the future.
Wow, that's powerful.
Well said.
Very, very, so important. I had written down too, Joel, and you said it better, but I wrote a lot of attempts to cancel history that this past year. I'm all for more inclusion, more voices, so many more stories that need to be amplified and told, but not to erase history. We saw monuments toppled this year. Ulysses S. Grant, who was the Union general, even Abraham Lincoln's monument was dragged. How do we learn history? How do we advance if we try to censor it? So I think that's so important.
Yep. And what about yourself, Ray?
I was thinking what stood out to me as I think back was the confluence of the president's State of the Union address and his acquittal from the impeachment the next day. And what I saw was a president who was, I mean, he was not going to back down to any position he took. He was not going to apologize for anything. And I think that was a lesson for all of us. And then, you saw Nancy Pelosi ripping up the thing.
Right.
I mean, it was like, how rude. And this is a leader. This is the third heartbeat from the presidency. Have we gone that backward that she would do something like that? And they get away with it. They get away with every little thing. So I was very happy to see the president just not give an inch. And the next day, he was acquitted from the impeachment. I mean, it was just a 24-hour period that was amazing to me. And I did write a poem about it. It's in my book somewhere.
Well, we would like for you to read that poem. We're going to go to Andrew, then we're going to come back to you for another reading.
I'm gonna step away for a second, get my book, and see if I can find it.
Terrific.
Okay,
A
thanks.
small town.
Okay, small. I gotta just say hello to Andrew.
Oh, absolutely.
Hello, Ray.
I'll be back.
Okay. So, Andrew, what stands out to you?
My highlight of the year has to just be the support that President Trump got from the American people this election. He got, I think, something like 11 million more votes than he got the first time. As Joel mentioned, minorities were voting for him, and big numbers, record numbers for any Republican that's ever ran for office before. Just goes to show, even with all the fake news media, the impeachment trials, the Russia hoax, everything they put him through in 4 years, it did not work. And President Trump actually gained popularity and gained a record
man.
Yeah, he gained a record amount of votes from this first run to his second run, and he got more votes than any president that's ever ran for re-election before. Just amazing.
Yeah. So, Ray, do you have that poem for us?
Not yet. I'm just.
Well, go ahead. I'll
just
start
getting
talking.
to my book.
No worries. Something that Andrew said that I think is really, worth repeating is that out of everything that this president has gone through, he was, voted to be as one of the most admired men in the world. And, it makes you wonder, even scratch your head, the way the media tried to tear him down. But yet and still, he was resilient and he stood tall. Now, this show isn't just about politics, what happened, but of course, it was one of the dominating things in the media, the world stage. President Trump. No matter where you'd go, you would always hear about President Trump. So, of course, we in turn will talk about President Trump and his presidency and what transpired this year. We did a polling on Twitter, and I was asking some of the questions. One of the questions that I put out there, I said, the top story of 2020, what was the top story? And we got 419 votes. Wow. And people said the election still was one of the top stories. Of course, I gave them choices. I said the election still, COVID-19, Hunter Biden, Eric Swalwell. Now, COVID-19, that dominated us after impeachment of the president. Now, you would think we would have been talking about that as opposed to some flimsy impeachment, but we weren't. Only after did people start to focus in on it, and it begs the question, why? Maybe a lot could have been done then. Everyone kept saying, listen to the science, listen to the science. Well, the science was telling us, don't wear a mask initially, we'll be okay. People who were listening to the science, like Nancy Pelosi and Governor Cuomo, they were saying, oh, go to Chinatown. Oh, we're open. We're an open country. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. Now they want to shut us down. But at the time, it's like, listen to the science. What happened? See, these are the things that we have to remember. We have to go back to the genesis of everything to understand why we are here now, December 31st, with a lot of places being shut down. A lot of people are depressed. Yeah. There's suicide. People have lost their livelihood. Restaurants are closed. People are without jobs, don't know how they're going to, pay their mortgage, their rent, put food on the table. But as Heather said, within those little small circles, some of us managed to come together to help out our fellow men. People who didn't have food, people going to food lines for the first time ever, never thinking that they would have to do it. Why? Now, was it COVID-19? Was it the shutdown? Was it China who lied to us? Was it the World Health Organization? These are things that we have to have a post-mortem on and look at it as human beings, as Americans, and not point the finger. We have to look at it and say, wait a minute, what happened? How did we get here? How do we move forward? And I do believe that we will move forward. 2020 was our annus horribilis, but we will move forward in 2021. Ray, are you ready for us?
I am. The name of the poem is Trump's State of the Union. Tonight he came out swinging, left no prisoner in his path, a chance to vent, not to repent. Every word revealed his wrath. For 3 years he's walked a tightrope, the one they wished around his neck. One base rejoiced how he voiced the values we respect. He blasted all the socialists. Sanctuary cities came clearly into view. How he's eliminated terrorists, decked the Obama White House too. Proclaiming each accomplishment, blue-collar dollars in the bank. The last Tuskegee Airman, Rush Limbaugh, he would thank. He went for every jugular, hit them right between the eyes, watched them shrivel in rotunda seats, those white suits mortified with sighs. He didn't talk of unity or bridging party woes because it wouldn't matter what he says. We know where all that goes. There was no time for mending fences. With his acquittal the next day, how awkward was this moment, eclipsed anything he could say. This night will be remembered, filled with so many melancholy tears. Can't wait for each installment, 5 more Trump State of the Union years.
Wow. Brilliant. Loved it.
I only wish he has another 4 years because I would write another book.
And just tell our viewers how you came about the idea of writing this book, the first years of Trump's presidency.
Well, I've always written poetry for over 30 years, and it was mostly as a hobby, and then it became, something I like to do. But when that political hydrogen bomb went off in 2016, I said to myself that I have an opportunity to chronicle a presidency through poetry, and that's what I did. I thought that, it's been said that every movement needs a poet and someone to record the way we see it, not the way it's fed to us on the mainstream media.
Right.
So it was a lot of work. It took tracking all the events of over 4 years, and I put it all into one book, and it's all poetry.
Right. And when was the book first published?
My first book?
Right.
Or this book?
This book that you just read from.
This book was just published in the mid part of November.
Right.
I waited till after the election, and I do have a last poem in the book, which kind of left everything up in the air. I didn't want to commit to one way or the other. Thank you. I sent you the book, Rob. Hopefully you read a few things.
Yes.
But it was really a lot of hard work, but I think worth it. And I didn't do it for me. I did it for my children, grandchildren, and us. That there is a recorded history in poetry, a little different than a video or, a book, a novel, a movie. There'll be a lot said over the next many decades about the MAGA movement and what it was. And I really want people to know, from my point of view, exactly what happened.
Right. Well, we really appreciate that.
Thank
also
you.
Joining us is Josh. Josh has been on our show a couple of times, and we want to get his take on what he think was one of the major stories of the year. Josh is also an author. Josh, how's it going?
Very good. I just came back from a long walk around the neighborhood. It's quiet in New York, and it's very pleasant.
Okay.
And I've been thinking lately about. I'm not going to. I've been thinking more of like what was a big issue for me this year, something that happened personally.
Okay.
And I think something that will resonate with this group is that people know that I do a lot of environmental work, and one of my guests recommended reading about this book, Bury the Chains, and then another book, Amazing Grace. And I discovered a man named William Wilberforce. And I'm not sure how many people know him, but he was a major force in the British abolition movement. And when I mentioned him to friends of mine who were evangelical and conservative, they were like, Josh, you've never heard of him before? And I said, no, I haven't. And they're like, he's a major, major figure for us. And this began a big discovery and opened a lot of doors for me to talk with a lot of people who normally, when I would speak to them about the environment and how I discovered this man and what he had done in a very different context, of which I don't want to say is the same at all, but took on some major industries and changed the world. And people would respond to me and say, Josh, no one's ever talked to me this way. Everyone has always been so hitting me over the head with guilt and shame. And so it's opened up me to talk to a lot of people and get reception from them. And for me to open up with them as well, in a way that I hadn't before, to where I think that there's a big chance of conservatives approaching the environment as something to steward and really take on for the reasons that I do, which is it's this beautiful gift that we have around us is something to steward and protect, and it's a beautiful land we have. I mean, this is such a beautiful country.
Right.
And so that was a big change for me, is to approach things from a more Wilberforce direction, if that makes sense.
What is your hope this year, speaking about the climate?
Environment in general.
The environment, what would you like to see happen?
Man, New York City has so much more litter now. I would like to see, I have this dream of different communities getting into kind of friendly competition to be more clean, less litter going to the ground in the first place, and whatever gets there to be picked up. So it's just, the amount of litter is just crazy. And it's not the biggest issue in the world, but it's something everyone can do something about.
Right. And I find it interesting because we're in New York City itself is a liberal city, and you would think that it would be a lot cleaner than it is. Not that other cities, that are conservative cities aren't, but you would think that with the governor and our mayor that they would be on board and try to do something about it. But to me it seems as though when this pandemic hit, things just went belly up. And I too walk around and I see all the garbage, and it's unbelievable. It's like night and day from January of 2020 to now December.
Yeah, and I think of the feeling of people inside of just when you see it and you walk past it and just figure like, well, someone else would take care of it, or my taxes are there for it, or something like that. Do you know what the budget is for the New York City sanitation?
What is it?
Annually? $1.6 billion. If we just didn't get so much trash, we could probably have that pretty easily and save a lot of money in the process by not buying stupid stuff.
Wow. Unbelievable. Moving on to our polling. Thank you, Josh, for joining us. I'm sure we will hear from you later on in the show. Also in our polling, I had a question I put out there. The worst governor. I got 192 people to vote. And these were the choices: Andrew Cuomo, Governor Newsom, Gretchen Whitman, and Ralph, or I want to use the Southern, I'm from the South, but unfortunately I never had that really nice Southern accent, but I'm going to try to get it now, Ralph Northam. And the folks said that the worst governor, drum roll, Andrew Cuomo. Why do you folks think that is? Any takers on that?
he did a bad job, and then he congratulated himself on what a great job he did. And New York residents don't seem to want to hold him accountable, which the irony is, people blame Donald Trump for deaths and things that were judgment calls, but the one real act of commission that was clearly a big mistake,
The nursing homes.
that Cuomo refuses to take accountability for, was the directive to force nursing homes to open their doors to COVID-19 infected elderly, which we know, whether there was more than one way that the elderly became heavily infected in New York's nursing homes or not, whether it still doesn't mean that was the right decision. It very obviously was not, and he's absolutely refused to acknowledge it or to really do much different going forward. I confess I don't know exactly what the status of things is now, but I don't think that there's anything really dramatically changed that I'm aware of. And New Yorkers just seem to be, by and large, going along with it, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, joining us also, I see we have Charles downtown, and I think we also have Trust God 7733 BB. Thank you both for joining us, and we were just going around the circle and with everyone telling what they felt was a top item this year on their list. BB, what do you think was the number one news item?
Well, I think the COVID-19, that was the number one news item because, and thank you for having me, and Happy New Year, everyone, because it impacted our lives. I mean,
Okay.
being in the New York City tri-state area, I mean, you really felt it between New Jersey and New York. So I would have to say COVID-19. But what's interesting is that the Democrats have given China a total pass. They blame it on Trump. They blame this and that. But this came from Wuhan, China, and they seem to be celebrating New Year's, the New Year's in a fun fashion tonight. While in New York City, it's almost like a ghost town.
Exactly.
So a lot of what's going on, I blame the Democrats, quite frankly, even more than China.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. And Charles, yourself?
Oh, thank you guys again for having me. And I think the biggest story this year has to be the Supreme Court and what led from it to the election. So I guess it's kind of two. First of all, when Ruth died, and the Republicans put forth Amy Barrett, we all knew the Democrats wanted to pack the court to ring in socialism, and the country saw for the first time the Democrats' plan, which is to pack the court, which is to add D.C. and Puerto Rico as states. So they really saw their true socialist intentions. And then with the election and all the games that got played in Pennsylvania and Georgia, and the country, 75 million Americans really woke up to the fact that these people are socialist and corrupt. And then obviously the violence that happened to my girlfriend and I and so many other Trump supporters, which was a result of this basically rigged election and Patriots going out to protest. So I guess the biggest story is, like I said, I guess they're kind of connected with the Supreme Court and the election in 2020.
Right. Well, again, as BB said, not much is said about China and COVID-19, the Wuhan virus, China virus. I know that we've spoken about this on the show before. We've even had Josh to talk about it, person who's concerned about the environment. And Josh, you had mentioned at one point, you said that, well, I'll let you speak for yourself. Give us your thoughts on it.
On the virus?
Yes.
Well, I'm always going to come back to the prevention of future ones. I mean, there's the one that's out now, and I don't want to take away from doing what we can to save lives and things like that. But for decades, people have been saying not if, but when. And we know where the virus has come from. That it comes from when we encroach into wildlife territory, when we pack animals together into CAFOs, into factory farming, and in wet markets. And we can stop these things. I mean, these things can predictably breed and mutate viruses and get them to jump species into us. And I don't know that we've done anything to prevent things like that from happening again. So people for most of the year have been saying, Josh, don't worry about that now. We have to worry about the here and now. So there's a vaccine out. It looks like it's effective. I hope that now we start talking about what will we do to prevent future viruses from happening or future pandemics from happening.
Okay. Speaking of the vaccine, how many of you feel comfortable taking the vaccine? Okay.
If I may say personally, I would like people in higher risk, 65 and older, to take the vaccine before people of lower risk, like myself, do. So
I agree.
I definitely don't feel comfortable just based off that alone.
Right.
And obviously, I guess the
Go ahead, Charles.
oh, and I was gonna say, it seems like the side effects that could come from don't really affect people 65 and older. It's more dangerous for someone 65 and older to get COVID than the side effects of the vaccine. So it just makes sense for the elderly to get the vaccine before anyone young does. I don't know what does everyone else think about that.
Well, no, I agree. I think that the elderly should, people who are at high risk. I heard.
Well, as a 68-year-old, just talking for myself as a 68-year-old, I'm planning on taking the vaccine mainly because I want to be able to travel and do things without the government telling me no. I don't want to have a situation where I go to, Fort Lauderdale Airport and they say I can't go wherever. So I'm less afraid of dying, but I don't want my life to be, restricted.
Right.
Mom will take it, but she doesn't care either way because she's even said to me, Ray, if I drop dead from COVID, I'm not going to blame you for, schlepping me here, taking me there, going to, the food store. So there's no guilt going on, but I will take the vaccine.
Well, I started saying a while ago that I had read, or not read, but I heard on a talk show, a elderly person, I think she was like 75 or maybe 80, and she said that she felt that the older population should not take the virus first. She said because they can stay inside. And her reasoning was that the older people who are out working are the ones who should take it so that they can continue to work. Now, of course, each to each his own, but I thought that was interesting, her thought process. And when you think about it, it does make sense, that people who are out and about, who could possibly get it, why not let them take the virus? So now, I don't want to stay on all this heavy stuff. One of the things I want to talk about is that why am I the only person with a funny cap on in 2021? I thought everyone else was going to do this. I went out looking all over Manhattan for this. Now, mind you, last year, there were street vendors everywhere selling this. Like for $1, I paid, I think, $4 for the glasses, and I had to harag with the guy, the cap I think I got for $1.49. But I would think that more people would have this on. Are you guys under shutdown that you were unable to go out and get this? What is this?
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yes, Heather, you did dress up, and I have my sparkling red grape, drink next to me. So, I want to be festive, and get with the program. So, like I said, I want to lighten things up a bit. We're going to go to Ray next for another poetry reading. But what are some of your thoughts on previous or prior New Year's? How have you celebrated the New Year? Who wants to go first? Joe. Okay, Joe, you want to bounce it to Charles?
I'm right here. I'm here.
Okay, Joe, go ahead.
I celebrated my New Year the American way, man. Fireworks, spending time with my kids. I'm a family-oriented guy. Because the way I work, I don't get to spend a lot of time with my kids. So when, like I told my wife, I took this 5-day vacation because I want to spend time with my kids. And, I just wanted to enjoy life, because I try to, keep them on a positive outlook. I know 2020 sucked, but listen, 2021, we can take the lessons from 2020 and make it better. That's all we can do at this point.
Absolutely. Okay, Charles, you're up next.
Well, my girlfriend and I, we've been together for 5 years, and we've always celebrated New Year's together. Right now, actually, we're currently at a get-together, undisclosed location in Washington, D.C., with a bunch of Patriots. And it's probably one of our last New Year's before we settle down and have a family. So we're just enjoying ourselves. We're excited to be in your situation, actually, Joel, in a few years, hang out, hopefully with our kids and such. So
Oh, so
that's what we're spending.
is there a possibility that you're going to pop the question next year? I mean, come on the show and do it. Come on the show.
But it's looking more likely than not.
Oh, okay. Come on our show and do it.
Sounds good. I'll let you guys know. No
Oh,
worries.
absolutely. Let's see who's next. Let's go to BB. Past New Year's, how have you celebrated?
Well, we generally celebrate it in the past by going to church or just watching the New Year's programs on television. This year, it's a little different tone. I think so many of us just so glad 2020 is ending. You know what I mean? Because I usually get the hat, like not that hat, but like the glasses and all that. But I don't know. I like that hat, cute, and I like the 2021 glasses. But this year, it's been a little bit of a, I don't want to be negative, but a little downer. So I think over, to be honest. But hopefully by this time next year, we'll be in a much more festive mood. You know, we've been put through hell this year.
And what about? Oh yeah, this year has been, like I said, like but you know, but we can be thankful, as Heather was saying earlier when she was talking about the year in review, that we do have our health, we have our family, and we should be thankful. There's a lot that's going on. We've had guests on the show to talk about the restaurant industry, how they're feeling, and there's just a lot that's happening. But as we come to the close of 2020, I'm thankful that I have all of you guys in my lives, that I've met you, I know you, we've had conversations, and we're able to get together tonight and do this. It's not probably where some of you would want to be. You would probably want to be at some discotheque or someplace, But we're fortunate that we are able to come together and talk and have conversations because we're all from different backgrounds. Yeah. So let's see, who's next? Let's go with Josh.
So I've been thinking about two kinds of New Year's that I've had in the past. So, and I have to make a comment on what I just typed in here, that once you took the glasses off and put them on your eyes, and I can see the clock up there, I'm thinking you're Flavor Flav. I don't know where Rob went, but it looks like you've been replaced. So there was a time in my late 20s, early 30s when I was at the clubs and partying, and I was an artist in those times, and I had my art up at the club, so I knew the owners of the clubs, and I would get in all the VIP stuff, and I'd party with the DJs, and that was super fun, being in New York and being at the height of that. But before that, I don't know if you guys know, I have a PhD in physics, and one year, the qualifying exam, which is it's a test of all the physics that you've learned up to that point, 3 days, January 2nd, 3rd, and 5th. I knew that I'd be sitting in a room just answering physics questions. And so that New Year's Eve was studying and hearing partying all over the place because I was up on campus. So that was a lot like this one. It was, except there was noise outside. And now that I think of it, there's no noise outside.
That's so sad.
Yeah, it's quiet. So do you feel like, does it make you feel the way you felt when the pandemic first hit and we were like all shuttered in?
Well,
was it a different kind of quietness outside?
I knew a friend of mine had been following it for long before other people in the US had, and I was talking to him. So I left before it got very serious. So I can't speak to that. I know when I got back, then it's definitely. No, when I got back, there were all the protests going on, and there was a helicopter overhead all the time.
Right.
I mean, there's a helicopter overhead for like weeks on end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's quieter than that.
Right. Okay. And let's see, who else? Small town. What about yourself? We can't hear you. It's probably on mute.
I'm with Josh. In my early 20s, I spent some time going out on New Year's Eve and stuff. But as I've gotten older, I've kind of called it amateur hour. It's dangerous to be out there on New Year's Eve. A lot of drunk drivers and whatnot. So I usually just stay home and watch some television and drink some beer at my house.
Okay. And what about you, Heather?
Well, I used to watch Times Square on TV with my dad when I was a teenager. He lived on the West Coast, and I would usually be with him for winter break. So it was always nice bonding time. My father loved New York. He loved showbiz and action, and he was living in a little town on the West Coast. So we kind of bonded over New York and the whole vibe, and those were some of my happiest New Year's with my dad. Recent years, yeah, blessed to be with family, and I will see some family in a bit, but very quiet this year. Very, very grateful, as you said, Rob, to be with you guys. What a blessing to meet like-minded folks and people. We don't agree on everything all the time, but so stimulating, such a great opportunity to be here now. And I tried to cook something this year, which for a New York City single woman is a big bit of progress, although it sort of tasted like something from the Olive Garden. So it was a bit of a misadventure. But I'd say this was a memorable New Year's nonetheless, because I'm spending it with you guys. So
Great. Okay. And then we will go to Ray, who will tell us what his favorite year was, what he did, and he'll also read to us.
Well, I haven't been one to really do much on New Year's Eve. In fact, I once wrote an essay that I couldn't remember any New Year's Eve except for maybe one, what I did. I'll remember this one for certain. But, I just kind of like Andrew, I didn't like to get out in the streets and drive because I'd want to have a drink. And so New Year's for me has always been rather quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been bouncing around. I'm trying to figure out what poem to read, because we're all over the place in terms of subjects, but I think I settled on one that has to do with resolutions, New Year's resolutions. And it's called To Do or Not to Do. I try to stay sharp, but often it's dull, considering a thought, something to mull, awaking each day to figure it out. Should I attend to it now or just chill about? To be more productive, we wish to attain, but sometimes our butt needs the blue of a flame. So how do we measure? What is the test? Should we make a big list and put it to rest? We know overexertion comes with a price, but surely one thing would sound rather nice. So I decided to try it without further ado. Give it the effort, prove that it's true, that accomplishing nothing should not cause us guilt. A hopeful tomorrow is how progress is built. Focus on one thing. That's all that it takes. But if you decide not to do it, it's okay, for God's sakes.
Thank you. That was a good one.
Don't worry if you're not getting anything done. Just say, Ray said it's okay, that you don't have to do anything and you can still be happy in your life.
How many
So there.
Yes, I agree. And now, how many of you make New Year's resolutions? Anyone want to talk about their New Year's resolution? Did you make any this year for 2020?
I used to make New Year's resolutions. I don't do that anymore. And potentially set yourself up for failure. It sounds cutesy, and you hear the commercials about it, but really it's a lifestyle change to do better, moving forward, progressing as a human being. So I don't want to title it resolution, just moving forward, because we tend to fail those resolutions in the first 90 days or something, I heard. So I don't do New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, I like that. Just moving forward, because you can set yourself up when you come into the end of the year and you're realizing, oh my gosh, I haven't done it. I think a lot of people, one of the resolutions that they like to do, which I see every year when I'm going to the gym, is, well, I'm going to lose a certain amount of weight. Okay. And then the year comes in, they start the gym or whatnot. And then after, I'd say about 10 days, it's like, oh, forget about it. I can't do that. That's impossible, Then they start beating themselves up. So I agree with you, BB. I mean, saying that, I'm going to do this, you don't do it, as opposed to, I'm just going to strive for this, I think is a lot better, a lot easier. Anyone else want to talk?
Yeah, I think that's true, Rob. And I think that making big changes is very, very difficult, which, not to dwell on COVID, but one of the things I've thought of this past year is that this whole idea of total lockdown, I think, was kind of doomed to fail because it's too much. It's like saying to a person, okay, you have to stop eating bread, alcohol, white flour, sugar, desserts, fried food, complete cold turkey, and we'll let you know when it's going to change, maybe forever. It's like people are going to go a little crazy or a lot crazy, whereas if you make a couple small changes and commit to them, it's doable. So I think that this idea, one thing I managed this past year was no more sugar in my coffee. Like, I still can have dessert once in a while. I can still have a glass of wine, as you saw the other night. But it's just one consistent thing that I committed to. And it actually, it worked. Hey, there we go. So small changes, I think, are, a good goal.
Yep. And what was that you're showing us, Charles?
Oh, I was just opening a
Your choice?
Yeah, might as well. But yeah,
And what about
you got the New Year's resolutions? I swam for 21 years of my life, and every time beginning of January, it was always the hardest for swim practice because everyone would be either swimming in lanes or going to the gym. So that kind of shaped my opinions on New Year's resolutions too. I think people should just set a goal, and when they reach that point in their life where they think they need to set the goal, they need to just move forward, no matter when it is. And I think people will be really successful following their strategy. I try to follow it. I can't say I'm perfect at it, but I think that's the way to go.
Right.
And cheers, by the way. Happy 2021.
Cheers. And by the way, this is sparkling red grape. It's not an alcoholic beverage, but it's good. I like it. Who else is out there? Joel, what about yourself? New Year's resolutions?
You know what, man? I've never been a resolution type of guy. I've always been a guy of action.
I like that.
So my next course of action this year is just to try to improve my force on the social media game, because it seems like I've been doing pretty good with my numbers on that out of nowhere. My wife think I got a talent or something. I don't know. I just think I'm just a hilarious guy. But either way it goes, I just want to try to bring up, if I do explode or become a sensation, I want to bring in the people like you, Andrew, all the people you've had on the show, give everybody more exposure that gave me exposure.
Hey,
that's all I really want to do.
Thank you. That would be great.
We're there for you. And what about yourself, Josh?
Well, I'm pretty open about all my daily habits. So, Rob, about, let's see, I just started my 10th year of doing burpees and calisthenics every morning, every evening. So next December, I should finish 10 years of exercising twice a day, every day. I haven't missed a single day in all that time. I also have not filled one load of trash this year. So I intend to make it through all of 2021 into 2022 before filling up this load of garbage that I have. So that'll be my first time making it 2 calendar years with only one load. I'm about 100 pages into the draft of my next book. So it's not really a New Year's resolution, but that's what I have to really resolve to. It's really easy to put off writing. So
just briefly, I just want to go back to the trash, because you and we talked about that. I just want to make certain that people understand what you're saying. So one small bag of garbage.
Yeah, this.
Do you have it? You can show it to us.
That canvas bag that's all my trash for a year.
Wow. That's like all my trash for a day.
Yeah. I used to empty it once a week. And it's a canvas bag because I compost all the wet stuff. That's only dry stuff, so I don't need plastic bags for that because it's dry. And yeah, I used to throw out my garbage once a week, and I challenged myself to go for a week without buying any packaged food, and that stuck. So it went to once a week, to once a month, once every 3 months, once every 6 months. And the last time it took me about 18 months to fill the load before, and this one I'm now in my,
Amazing.
I guess, 13th month.
I don't know.
And
how you doing?
and speaking of the food, so Rob, I think it was this year. It would have been in January before that you came over.
Right.
So you could give a review of the food.
Well, no, the food is really good. It's not. You would think you're eating meat, but you're not eating meat. You're eating beans and fruits, fresh fruit. And actually, when I first went over, I thought Josh was going to serve up some like spectacular meat dish, and no, it wasn't at all. And if you check out my Twitter page, you will see the dish that he prepared. What was the name of it? What would you call it? Is it like a delicacy that you have you given it a name?
I call it my famous no packaging vegan stew.
Okay.
And that's what I had for dinner tonight. And yeah, I've gotten to know. I go to the farmers market, and I have a CSA, and I've gotten to know my farmers. And I buy stuff that's in season. So I'm constantly getting stuff I haven't eaten for 10 months because it's only what's in season.
Right. Okay, well, I understand that Charles has got to leave us, so we want him to leave us with some, words of wisdom, from a lot this year, and he's still going forward. Yes.
Again, thanks for having me. And my words of wisdom is anyone who is watching this right now thinking, ooh, do I want to go to Washington, D.C. or not? To the march on January 6th. If that's your thought, you need to go to the march because our country is at a crossroads. The left is going to drown out free speech or free thought that doesn't align with them, either with what we've seen with the ballot box, packing the courts, or sadly violence with Antifa. So 2021 is the time for people to stand up for their constitutional right. And may I end, if you're in Georgia and you're debating if you want to vote or not, please go vote because I understand it's terrible. Stacey Abrams' sister being able to rule on the case is awful. But if you don't vote, it will be harder to expose the fraud. So my ending words of wisdom is please come to D.C. on the 6th. I promise you, I've been attacked by Antifa. I know people are worried. It will be safe if you go to Capitol Hill and just go back to your hotel. There's plenty of small towns around D.C. actually that are actually really red, and they'd love to have your business like 60, 70 miles out. And due to coronavirus, there's no more D.C. traffic, so it's only like an hour and a half drive in. So anyone thinking, like I said, please come to D.C. and join us for this protest because this is so important. And I think it came out today that 140 members of Congress right now are thinking about voting against the Electoral College. So that means we have a 70 vote margin. The more people that show up, the more that 70 vote margin shrinks. Mm-hmm. And 10 members of Congress in 2018 were in districts that Donald Trump won, but they're a Democrat, and they voted for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. Nancy Pelosi, in theory, is going to need all 10 of those members to hold the vote for Joe Biden. But those 10 members are going to have to make a decision. Are they going to vote with Nancy Pelosi, or are they going to vote with their district? And the more people that are in Capitol Hill that day, it will make their decision harder. And hopefully we can get a few of them to vote for the president. And if that happens, he's going to win. People don't realize that. So come to D.C., create maximum pressure. Obviously, do it peacefully. And we're in a great spot. And I look forward to talking to all of you more in the new year and keeping you guys updated. The Trump and everything else going on.
Absolutely. Right. Have a safe and prosperous new year. Cheers.
Thanks. You too. Cheers to everyone. Stay safe tonight as well.
Thanks, Charles.
Bye, Charles. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're to Andrew. Andrew, New Year's resolution. What's going on, man?
I don't really make New Year's resolutions, so I don't have much to comment on this one. I've enjoyed listening to everyone else's, but a couple of years ago I made one. I stopped drinking soda. I haven't had a soda in about 3 years, so that was a nice one I stuck to.
Good
But yeah, I'm just a Gatorade guy now mainly, so that's about it though in the last few years.
Yeah, I see you chugging down a lot of
Gatorade for
Gatorade.
the New Year's resolutions. Yeah.
Okay, so our next topic, let me move on to our polling that we had on Twitter. Want to try to get one? Let's see here. Well, this is what I thought. One that I thought was interesting because this comes up a lot. And before I talk about it, I just want to remind Heather that we were going to talk about it on last Thursday, but I guess we forgot about it. But here it is. Do you think racism exists? These were the choices. Racism is overrated. Yes, no, maybe so. 51.9% of the people said that racism is overrated. 23.6% of people said that yes, it does exist. 16.9% said no. 7.6% said maybe so. And that was from a vote of 237 individuals. Now, here's my take on it. Yes, I do believe that racism exists. Okay. Oh, my number is like really flashing there. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. I hope it's not distracting, but I kind of like it.
I think it works.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. Well, but I do believe that it does exist. I think that it is now at the point where it's almost like the boy who cried wolf. Every election year, people are saying racism, racism, this person's racist, this person's a racist. And I go take you back to 2008 when Hillary Clinton was running against Barack Obama. And when the race went to South, Bill Clinton made the statement. He said that this is talking about, I think, just Barack Obama winning a lot of the votes. And somehow they turned it into, he's a racist. He's a racist. Hillary Clinton is a racist. I thought, are you serious? The person, they said that Bill Clinton was the first black president. Now, how all at once did he become a racist? But they said he was a racist, and the media ran with it. Okay, of course, Barack Obama got the nomination for the Democratic Party. Now, 2016, President Trump, the same thing. He's a racist. But if you go back a couple of years, you'll hear rap music talking about, we want to be like Donald Trump. We want the Benjamins like Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. But then all at once, he became a racist. I mean, did he just overnight, like, I'm a racist now? I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's always they want to blow this in order to, get black votes to, go against things that I think that's going to help them out. But this whole thing with racism and not only that, misappropriation of cultures. Heather and I, we spoke about this. Now, this I think is just hilarious. Hilarious leads into Hillary. Hilaria. No, guys, I've got to be honest. I thought she was from Spain. I thought, wow, she's a beautiful woman. She had the accent and all this, but little did we know, as she said, I'm just a white girl from Boston. How the heck did she pull this off? I would think that some of her friends would have called the news stations, and maybe they did, and say, she's not from Spain. She's a white girl. Did you guys see her on Instagram? And she just said, I'm just a white girl.
She said,
be proud of who you are.
I saw the video where she was making a salad and she said something like, how you say in English? She was holding a cucumber and she was laying it on pretty thick without.
It's crazy. No, Heather, before I come to you to give your thoughts on it, I want my two black panelists to talk about this. First, starting with Bibi, what are your thoughts on this whole racism thing? Bibi.
Well, I think you brought up a good point that, before he became president, Donald Trump was very popular with hip hop artists. I mean, I have a couple of songs by Jay-Z in which they talk about Trump and all this and that. So you're absolutely right. Moreover, in 1999, Jesse Jackson gave Donald Trump, along with Rosa Parks and Muhammad Ali, a diversity award. Now, if Trump were so racist, why would the Reverend Jesse Jackson give now President Trump a diversity award along with, heroes like Muhammad Ali and Rosa Parks? So it's only after he became president and proven himself to be an America First president that the media tried to spin this whole thing that he's a racist. Donald Trump has done more for blacks than any president since Abraham Lincoln, and that is documented. He certainly has done more for blacks than Barack Obama or any Democrat. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay. Joel, what are your thoughts?
All right. So here's my thing about the whole racism card. Yeah, there's racism in the world. We all know that. There's racism everywhere you go. No matter what race you are, you're going to encounter some type of racism. I mean, no matter what color, what gender, whatever have you. I think that mainstream media and the liberals use the race card as a control mechanism to get what they want. So, for example, given like when they see the opportunity that happened to, George Floyd, what we saw this year, and they took that. Yeah, it was unfortunate what happened to George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, but then they were like, okay, well, every time y'all guys see this situation, I want you to understand that if it's a white cop with a minority or with a black man, this is going to be automatic racism. And next thing you know, that's the game they started playing. And it's gotten out of hand that now we got all this high crime rate, and everybody's like, now, oh, well, we didn't mean it that way. But we want you to do your job. So it's either one or the other. You either going to let the people, whether they're white, black, blue, or brown, in the uniform, do their job like they're supposed to, or you're going to go up here and accept the consequences of this is what's going to happen when you try to play this race card, because nothing is not going to go right because you're so busy trying to use people's oppression and anxiety for your own personal gain.
Good point. Good point. And now I will go to Heather.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of sensationalism in our media, which isn't to say that there's no problem or that things shouldn't be covered. But when you see something covered over and over and over, people's emotions get very, very riled up. And there's a point past which, arguably that's not so constructive, because it's a kind of propaganda, and that really does often divide people. I think that, as you said, Joel, there is racism. I think it's not just in America. I think a lot of people think, and they want to link it to America mainly or exclusively. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's the reality. I think it's a lot worse in some parts of the world even than in America. Middle East, for instance, more racism, more anti-Semitism. There are human beings enslaved literally today in some countries like Sudan. So when we talk about racism, I think that this idea of tying the problem specifically to America and trashing America for it is ill-informed, honestly. I mean, yes, it's here, but it's unfortunately, it's a phenomenon that is not unique to any one country or group of people. And we are there. In my heart, I believe this. We are all members of the human race. Really, I'm an individualist. I think that race is kind of an artificial concept. Sometimes I think the more I hesitate to say this because I know I don't want to sound like I'm dismissing the problems that exist, but I think that sometimes when we're obsessed with something, we give it more power than it deserves in a way. And I think that what interests me most about any human is his or her ideas, ethics, values, interests, not something as superficial as skin color. And so I think that the more I heard Rosa Parks speak in college, when I was in college, and I remember it was sort of at the beginning of all the identity politics stuff on campuses, and people were asking her, what do you think as a woman, as a Black woman? What about this? She said, well, what, you want me to answer through the lens of being Black and being a woman? Maybe we should focus, first of all, on what do I think as an individual? So I think about that a lot, and about how this whole obsession and discussion in a lot of ways, I think, has taken us, in some ways as a society, taken us backward rather than forward. That said, I don't mean to minimize the eye-opening nature of what happened this year. Certainly, I think a lot of people, including myself, didn't realize that police brutality was as significant a problem as it is in the country. But I also think that, and Rob and I, we've discussed this many times, the Black Lives Matter movement, important as it is, I think that it's equally, if not more important, to focus on children too, all children. And this past year, we saw more Black children killed in the crossfire in the inner cities. And I think the movement needs to honor them as well. And I will never think of this year without thinking about those children.
Right.
Their lives mattered.
Right. Now, moving on from that, a little more light.
Well, I want to get in on the racism topic real quick, Rob.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
As you know, I've been to a lot of Black Lives Matter protests, Antifa protests. I covered several for the website throughout the year. I was in Portland, I was in Tulsa, I was in Louisville. I was all over the country covering these protests. And the main thing that stuck out to me is just the misinformation that people have anytime that these shootings or whatever take place with the police officers. They were so quick to jump to conclusions, specifically the George Floyd case. I think the video that came out when George Floyd was already begging that he couldn't breathe pretty much debunked a lot of it, that the cop was responsible for killing him. So yeah, just a lot of misinformation, and a lot of it's just kids out there rioting and looking for trouble. I believe that Black Lives Matter and Antifa are both domestic terrorist organizations that need to be dealt with. Unfortunately, if Joe Biden wins, I think things are only going to get worse on that front, because sometime in 2021, we're going to hear the results of the George Floyd case with the police officers. And based on the evidence I've seen, I think they're all going to get off. And that's going to be a huge blow up when that happens.
Yep. Well, just going back to the George Floyd, one of the questions in the polling that we had was, what event do you think caused the riots this summer? And the choices were media instigation, the killing of George Floyd, COVID-19, or all of the above. 40% said all of the above, whereas 53.8% said it was the media instigation. And when you think about it, there's always a rush to judgment in these situations. As Andrew said, look at George Floyd. Now, I am not saying what happened to him should have happened, but the way the media put it was that, oh, he was a nice guy and he wasn't doing anything, and they just forced him down. But then as the story started to unravel, we saw that there was a different story to be told. The same thing with I think it was
Breonna Taylor,
Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, and Michael Brown. Michael Brown was, that story in itself. And there was a Netflix special about Michael Brown. The story that we were told was that he came out saying, "Hands up, don't shoot." That was never said. But to this day, people still think that he said, "Hands up, don't shoot." People still think that the police shot him and he was walking toward them, when in essence, he was beating the crap out of the police officers. He had just left a store whereby he had pushed the store clerk when he was stealing. Now, again, I am not saying he should have been shot, what happened to him, but the stories that the media told us just wasn't true. And I think in a lot of instances, when we stop and listen and look and do our own research, we find out that, it was just them trying to, go with their own story, their own narrative, when it just wasn't true. And that leads me to a more lighter side of the story that I wanted to talk about, and I want to bring Heather back in, going back to Baldwin's wife. Hilaria, like I said, I thought she was from Spain. She's a very attractive woman. My God. Why didn't people know that she was just a white girl with the made-up accent? Did she feel that it was necessary to proclaim that she was from Spain, and she couldn't say that she was just Hillary from around the block, like Jenny from the block, Hillary from the block? Why does she have to make up this entire persona that she's, I'm Hilaria? I love the name. I find the name very sexy. Just Hilaria, Hilaria.
Well,
but she was just Hillary from around the way.
I guess my guess, Rob, I don't know, but my guess is that she wanted to cash in on the cachet associated with being a member of a perceived minority.
The Latina community.
Yeah, it's like the closest thing to being Latina or Black that she could imagine she could pull off would be, this is my guess, to pretend to be Spanish, because it's sort of, in some people's minds, well, there is a connection, I guess, right? A lot of Latin folks, a lot of those countries were colonized by the Spanish, and so a lot of people, I think, are ethnically a mix of Spanish and Native, and so anyway, I think that in her mind, it was a way to seem like the closest way to seem Latina, therefore cool, trending, creative, an artist, and, more interesting as a person. So I think she probably just spun herself this identity. And it's hilarious.
Hilarious. Anyone else care to weigh in on, the Baldwin story?
Yeah. It's like the same thing that happened with Sean King. Like, if y'all guys don't know it, the extra woke white guy from Kansas, right? So all these years, he cut his hair, he had waves in his hair, everything. He made everybody thought that he was a light-skinned Black guy, until one day somebody was talking to someone online. They saw the profile and it was like, hey man, who's the profile with this guy that you taking a picture of? Oh, well, that's Sean King. Oh yeah, I know Sean King. He went to school with us in this little town in Oklahoma. We're like, what? Kansas? Like Kansas, like, yeah, that little town is nothing but predominantly white folks. So they're like, yeah, he's white, he's not Black.
Oh my God.
And then when he get exposed after 2 books later, he's going to say that he doesn't know these people. He doesn't identify as it. But your dad is on TV saying, yeah, that's my son. Like, here's the picture right here. Same thing with the Spain lady. I think that a lot of people love the fact or try to be more exotic, Like, they feel like if they say they're exotic or pull it off, they can reap the benefits of being different, That's why I keep telling people, being a minority, especially Black or Spanish, you're not oppressed. Everybody's trying to be it. So why is
It's
it
a sign
oppressed?
of progress.
I mean,
yes.
yeah. I mean, look at Rachel Dolezal. She made a lot of money. And then this year, there was a teacher teaching African American studies, had dreads and everything. And people thought that she was a light-skinned Black woman from Louisiana.
How do they pull this stuff off? I mean,
bro,
it's unbelievable. I mean, Alec Baldwin had to have been in on the joke. I mean,
I don't think it was a joke. I think it was kind of a scam. But
I mean, and not only that, her parents, her dad, I think, is a professor from Harvard. Her mom is a doctor. When they saw her on TV, what were they thinking? Were they not saying, wait a minute, Hillary, you do know that you're Hillary and not Hilaria. Now, she said that
we're just messing around with bottles.
She said that she has spent.
We're just messing around with bottle rockets at this point.
She said that she has spent a lot of time in Spain.
Right.
So I guess by virtue, I think she said a decade or so. So she felt that, okay, I'm here, so I can say that I am Spanish or Latina.
Right. Well, it's kind of like, pretentious people. Like, we all know somebody who's kind of a phony, who puts on, they say, I don't know, they say they went to a school they didn't go to, or they're, somebody who, like Madonna did that British.
Yeah, Madonna did it. Right.
So I think it's kind of like somewhere in between a pretentious sort of spoiled woman who's just, being full of it, and an actual scam. It's something in between. So my guess would be that her family's like, oh, that's Hillary. She does that. Yes.
That's Hilaria. Okay, here's one for you guys. Okay, so I've been in New York City. I'm from Arkansas, born and bred in Arkansas. I've been in New York City almost for, I would say, 20 plus years. So am I a New Yorker? Could I say that am I a native New Yorker, or would I just say I'm a New Yorker?
Native means you went to school here.
Okay. Well, I did go to school.
For me, native is you were born here.
Yeah.
You can definitely say you're a New Yorker. You
Well,
can definitely say you're a New Yorker, Rob.
but if you said it in Ray's accent and you walk around doing Ray's accent all the time, then you'd be sort of like, what would you be doing? Kind of be pulling an Ilaria a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so Ray, you were saying if I went to school here, is it primary school or? I'm sorry, Josh.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. And well, can I throw another wrinkle in too?
Okay.
That I had a friend who he met a girl at a bar, and he didn't expect anything to come of it. And when he talked to her, he put on a fake British accent, and they hit it off, and they really got along well. And they went on a couple dates, and eventually he didn't have it in him to tell her that he wasn't British and he was faking his accent the whole time. So he broke up with her in order to avoid telling her the truth.
Very Seinfeld.
Oh my God.
So now I wonder if is this cultural appropriation? I mean, he was white. Most British are white. Is it most people would say a British accent doesn't count. I don't know how people would say it. Should it be considered similar, or is it different? If you're faking British, is it different than if you're faking something a different skin color?
You just said something. You said that most British are white, but there are Black British there as well.
Yeah.
So okay. So back to my dilemma: am I a New Yorker?
Yeah. You're a New Yorker,
Yes.
but you're not native.
You're not a New Yorker.
Yeah, I think what I was saying about the schools, I think that every New York mayor, I didn't look this up. Someone I think told it to me once that I think every New York mayor went through the New York City school system. I'm not sure about that. Someone told me that once. So I was thinking about that. Like if you run for mayor, then I think it'll help if you went through the public school system or New York school system.
Okay. Now we're going to wrap things up at the top of the hour at 11. But before we do, I would like for Ray to read another one of his poems.
Oh my God! Thank you.
We can come back.
I have a few choices here. We've talked about racism in this segment. We've talked about making up something you aren't. I'm leaning towards a poem that I wrote in May of 19 called "The Equality Act." And some of you may recall that there was some, like legislation or something that was going on called the Equality Act. So I wrote this poem. I woke up this morning and decided to be the girl of my dreams, fancy and free. So I tucked in my privates, put a scarf on my neck, went to the mirror for one final check. Today I'm a female. I can go where I choose. Are there stalls in the bathroom, or do the urinals I use? Off to the workplace, perhaps HR will allow a change of my gender. Will my income equality endow? Called my life insurance agent, female costs will suffice. After all, now I'll live longer. Fool the actuarial charts and the price. I've upset the atomly apple cart, flip humanness on its head. Let's throw out all of the textbooks, make a transgender edition instead. I can't wait till tomorrow. Continue this gender attack. It's weird, I feel manly. It's indeed an equality act.
Oh, Red, I like that.
It's in my book. There isn't a subject or a person I haven't addressed.
Oh, wow.
But we need levity in all of this, because if somebody calls you a racist, what do you do?
Right.
That puts you into a corner. It puts you into a place you don't want to defend.
Right.
And I'm thinking the best thing you could do is ignore it.
Yeah. Well,
because it isn't true. It's like somebody pointed out. It's to fulfill a narrative or an agenda at your expense.
Right. Yep.
So.
Well, thank you.
That's it for poems tonight. I could go on all night,
Well, we thank you for sharing your poems with us. I think BB's going to have to leave us pretty soon. So before we go, let's everyone just go around and say something that you want you want to say before the year ends. Like I said, I'm glad that you guys joined us tonight. I appreciate the camaraderie, the friendship, and I've enjoyed the many discussions that we've had. over the course of a year. I know that we haven't always agreed on the same thing. Excuse me, but I think that what's important is that we're able to share our experiences and our views without attacking the other person. And I think that's what democracy is all about, not silencing the other side, but listening and learning from each other. Who would like to go next? As I sip from my
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we can enjoy. I think you're absolutely right. We can disagree politically, but we can also at the same time respect that person as a human being. And so that's my approach. I may disagree with you. Only time I may get or dislike you really is if you're a leftist trying to destroy America. But if you're a Democrat, you have different views, you're a liberal, you have a different point of view. I can respect that as long as it's not hateful. And we made it through 2020. It's a blessing. Even with all the challenges, we've learned a lot of new things here. Some of the things we've learned are good and some bad. We've learned who the patriots are and who the traitors are, in a sense. So 2020 has a blessing in its own way. For having me on, and it's been a blast. And I wish everyone a happy, blessed, and bountiful new year. Thank you.
Yes, and we look forward to seeing you again, maybe in the new year on our show. Thank you. Who would like to go next?
I can jump in, Rob. That's okay. Sure. Well, just a little historical note that 100 years ago we had another pandemic which gave way to the Roaring '20s, and I guess a reflection that there are always ups and downs in any individual life, in any individual year, in any century, and we're due for enough. So here's to 2021 and the Roaring '20s to come.
Yes. Who would like to go next?
Thank you, Heather.
I'll go. I'm also looking forward to something a little more humble than the whole Roaring '20s. I'm looking forward to shaking hands when I meet someone, hugging people that I know, spending time together. And it's like without it, you don't, how do I put it? It's not like I missed it because it kind of slips away, but then, you meet someone and you almost put your hand out and you don't get to shake.
Right.
And I know that human contact is such an important part of interacting, and it's been missing. I'm looking forward to it. I'm last on the list, of like the categories. I'm a healthy adult, so I don't know when I'm going to get access to be able to, but that's something that I just kind of think about. How's it going to feel? Not just like the physical sensation, but like I'm going to hug a few friends that I haven't hugged in a long, long time. I'm going to see a few friends I haven't seen in a long time. And I think we're going to have some really heartfelt hugs of just holding each other for a while.
I've got a hug for you, bro.
All right.
I've got a hug for you. As long as you feed me.
I got my famous no packaging vegan stew.
All right.
It's actually getting better all the time. So it's getting better.
Who's next?
I think I'm the only one left. Just want to thank everyone for coming on tonight. Thank Rob, who I think between him and I, had to have been close to 100 episodes this year. We did like 11 in a row, or maybe it was like 15 in a row. I think we did an episode every single night up until the election.
Yeah.
For about 2.5 weeks straight. So yeah, just thank Rob, and God bless everyone who tuned in all year long, and everyone out there in the world. Hopefully things get better for us all, and God bless. Thank you so much, everyone.
Definitely want to say thank you, brother Andrew. I mean, you have been on top of it when you reached out to me and said, hey, let's do this. And we connected so well. And thank you for being there. All the more power to us in 2021. Let's see where this thing takes us.
Thank you. Sure. Thanks, Andrew.
Well, have you guys have
you so much.
Good night, and happy and safe, prosperous New Year.
Happy
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yes.
God bless everyone.